Hi everyone, welcome at BFM TV studio for AI for Health. Today I'm welcoming 4 inspiring people to discuss about diagnosis. So I have the pleasure to welcome here institutions with Dr. Damien Gatinel, Head of Department Ophthalmologist at Foundation Hospital Rothschild. And from the startup side, I have Alexandre Guenoun, co-founder and CEO of KIRO, Dr. Arnaud Rosier, co-founder and CEO of Implicity, and Schwarz, director of the marketing part at Cardiologs. So, I would start with Dr. Gatinel. You are the head of ophthalmology department and at the hospital, and for many of us, also for me, at the hospital we receive some treatments. And today more than ever with the COVID for sure. But I discovered during a discussion with you that in France, and it's in France, in the hospitals, it's also a place where we have people that are coding, that are developing AI systems. So where it's the tech that is collaborating with the science. So can you tell me more about that? Do you involve startups or do you have super dev doctors?
So far, I'm lucky to have super dev doctors that we trained internally, and they train themselves to learn the skills to develop the tools we needed for reaching the goal we assigned to us.
Okay, so we discussed a lot together, and we had the discussion last year with the make or buy debate for AI systems, but for you, it was the absolutely make your own AI system. So it was not a debate for you. Can you just give us some more details?
Well, I think as a doctor, you identify a problem, and I think you have a clear idea of what you need to achieve. And if you combine in one individual the skills of coding and also knowing the diagnosis aspects, it's superior to the addition of the two, and you can save time. You can avoid a lot of discussions, and you can maybe on the way identify things that a non-specialist would not really pay attention to. So I think it's really a winning situation when you can, as a doctor, develop the tools you need for those applications.
And as a doctor, you are specialized in the cornea and the cataract. So can you explain us how do you use AI in that two topics, two sectors to...
Yes, so in ophthalmology, the cornea is one of the most important part of the eye. It's the first lens. And to, for example, perform refractive surgery, you need to assess the health of the cornea. And for that, you have instruments which require a lot of data, like the shape of the cornea, the thickness, etc. And you need to make decisions. And we trained, for example, an algorithm. It's like supervised training to identify special diseases that are exclusion to refractive surgery, so we do a better job preoperatively. And also we did unsupervised also clustering, just to see if algorithm could identify new features that we would not really look at. And we did quite well, I think, so far in this domain.
So you talked about the cornea, but about the cataract, what...
Yes, so the cataract is the most performed surgery in the world, all specialties included. And for each surgery, you need to compute, to predict the power of the lens, which is replacing the crystalline lens in the eye. And we have mathematical formulas for that, but it cannot do the whole calculation because there is a part you need to predict. And for that, because it's a very... we have abundant data for this very frequently performed surgery. And if you collect the data, you can use, again, AI tools to refine and improve your predictions to achieve a better outcome in your surgery.
So I remind that cataract chirurgical, it's about 700,000 operations every year, right?
Yes, in France.
In France, yeah.
It's millions in the world.
Wow.
And again...
So the potential is huge.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And it's really a typical application for AI in medicine because you have a background. It's not a new problem, but we have new tools to make a better job today.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. So around this table, we have also entrepreneurs and startup representatives that are collaborating with hospitals, which the objective is to gather patient data to help health professionals, but also to use and to use new diagnosis solutions. So I would start with France. France Schwarz, you are the Europe marketing directors at Cardiologs. So can you explain us how this flow of data that you collected, and if I remember more than 10 million data you collected, are used to make better diagnosis today?
Yes, so Cardiolog is a French startup that was founded in 2014 around the mission to democratize expert cardiac diagnostics. So we work on the ECG exam, the electrocardiogram, and our objective is to decrease the analysis time as much as possible. What we discovered is that actually the ECG analysis still requires a lot of time. It is very time-consuming, very labor-intensive, even for experts. And on the other hand, for non-experts, it can be challenging. So that's why we developed a solution that is unique and that is built around a deep learning algorithm that allows to help the healthcare professionals, cardiologists or electrophysiologists, to diagnose as quickly as possible an arrhythmia, a heart rhythm disorder. And what's the reason why a deep learning algorithms for such an application is good is because the ECG is looking at the electrical current in the heart, and it's a wave that is called a PQRST wave. And while traditional solutions only look at the R interval, which is the heart frequency, we are able, with a deep learning solution, to look at the whole wave and to really depict patterns that are linked to abnormalities, like an expert typically would do. And in terms of benefits to the user, what has been demonstrated in the US with our users there is that we are able to reduce by about 80% the time that is needed to analyze the ECG.
So you were telling me that you are going from a 25 minutes analysis to 5 minutes one. So do you mean that in France and in Europe, we could possibly multiply by 5 the number of patients in a day with the same level of analysis?
So it's a bit different in France and in most European countries because in the US, there are dedicated diagnostic centers where most of the hospitals outsourced their ECG analysis. So these centers have ECG technicians that review all day long ECG exams and do the reporting. In France and in most EU countries, these centers do not exist, and it's still the cardiologists and the electrophysiologists who do the analysis themselves. So they go more straight to the point, I would say, really do the analysis and find out what's going on to be able to treat the patients, but they don't take 25 minutes to analyze a Holter. That being said, we have done a clinical study with 3 French expert centers, and we have been able to demonstrate a reduction of almost 50% in time. And this indeed translates directly into either more diagnostics being made or more time for the physicians with their patients, etc. And so one of our users, for instance, Massy, has been able indeed to I would say, save 2 days of physicians per month thanks to Cardiologs.
That's important, and so I understood that after a stroke, patient needs Holter exams. That's the right name, Holter, but they often need 6 months to get the results. Also, you need it really fast. So, how is that possible? Can you help them? Can you help with Cardiolog solution?
Yes. So about 30% of strokes are called cryptogenic strokes, meaning we don't know the underlying cause of the stroke. And the most commonly suspected cause is atrial fibrillation, which is the most common type of arrhythmia. And to be able to diagnose this, indeed, you need a Holter, and you need a long-term Holter. At least 3 days, ideally 7 to 14 days, to be able to find the atrial fibrillation. But you can imagine with such a long recording, there's a lot of data to analyze, so it takes a lot of time. And because in France and most EU countries there is no dedicated reimbursement for this extended Holter, and because there is also no service to do this, like in the US, it's actually hard for patients. They really struggle to find someone to make this diagnosis. And so they either don't get a diagnosis or need to wait several months to do so. And that's a real problem when you know that after a stroke, there is a very high risk of second stroke if you don't treat the underlying AFib. So that's why we think AI potentially can really help in this by reducing the time that is needed, or even potentially empowering the neurologists to do the analysis themselves if they have an autonomous diagnostic solution.
Thank you very much, France. I think we will continue discussing about that with Dr. Arnaud Rosier. You are the co-founder and CEO of Implicity, and you are also part of the Health Data Hub. So thanks to Implicity platform, you are helping doctors to remotely follow their cardiac patients. And more than that, thanks to your algorithm, you can delete repetitive tasks and predict aggravation for patients with heart disease. Can you explain us how Implicity is working today?
Yeah, thank you. So, being a physician myself, I of course tried, as my colleagues say, to basically solve my own problem, and believe this company was ready to say, okay, can we bring the best tool to physician electrophysiologists that are trying to do cardiac remote monitoring. So basically you have these 15 million patients across Europe and the US that have a pacemaker or an implantable defibrillator. So, a very sophisticated implant with a lot of electronics that generate a lot of data. And all this data is coming to the manufacturer's cloud, thanks to the unique technology they put there. But basically, it's very difficult to handle all this data that is coming. So Implicity is a one-stop tool for, all of the cardiac electrophysiologists. Basically, we pull all the data from all devices, all manufacturers, into a single platform. And doing that, basically, you can reuse data for routine care, of course, but also for research. So that opens a lot of exciting perspectives.
So it was the beginning of my next question. Why do healthcare professionals need this innovation for following the patients?
Yeah, so even before COVID, what we discovered is that having these devices remotely followed and not just doing in person, face-to-face to your physician, was basically cutting mortality by 40% within a year. So that's a lot. That's a huge benefits for patients. But in Europe, only 10% of the patients are proposed remote monitoring by their current facility, cardiac department in the hospital. And the reason for that is because it's a new job for physicians. They are not treating the patient directly. They are having a lot of data coming to them, but they still need to triage it. Yeah. So they definitely need a tool to do that. And using Implicity, one of our customers, for instance, very close to here, which is Institut Mutualiste Montsouris with Dr. Nicolas Mignot, was able to go from 200 patients using remote monitoring, so basically none, to 2,000 patients, which means now all the patients they implant, and they implant a lot every year, are able to gain benefit of this reduction of mortality and all the benefits of it. And in the era of COVID, it's particularly important to be able to treat patients remotely, especially with heart diseases.
So let's come back to your AI algorithm, because you are using two types of algorithm. The first one is to replace repetitive tasks from professionals, and the second one is to predict aggravation. Can you explain just us the difference and maybe the impact of those?
Yeah, sure. First one is very close to what cardiologs do, basically. So save a lot of time to people that need to see the data. So we do that, to diminish the number of alerts, find the alerts that matters by combining with clinical information, etc. The second one is what most people speak about AI right now is prediction. So it's a unique opportunity for Implicity, being the only company right now to have access to data from the Health Data Hub, which is a state initiative. We are going to be able to compare the physiologic trends from pacemakers to the hospitalization of patients and try to anticipate, to predict adverse outcomes for heart failure, which is currently the most costly and one of the most severe condition in the world, in Western countries, and maybe help physicians to prevent them, and so bring this benefit to the patient.
Thank you very much for this precision. And I have the chance to welcome Alexandre Guenoun. You are the co-founder and the CEO of KIRO. So at KIRO, you are using AI to simplify medical biology and lab tests reports to make them understandable and relevant for the patient and the doctors. Can you tell us how KIRO works and what is the patient benefits?
Yeah, sure. So at KIRO, we have developed a platform that helps patients better understand their results and also make them actionable and relevant for doctor and health professionals thanks to artificial intelligence. So we started with a basic lab test report that we found outdated because there are a lot of cryptic results that are very stressful for patients. And so what we did at KIRO is to build a platform that works in a very simple way. As soon as your biologist validates your result, you can have access to the platform, see your result on an online and interactive way. So patients have a direct access to personalized information and content that we made understandable for you. On the other side, and at the same time, you have your doctor that has a privileged access on your biological results with recommendation and information made through artificial intelligence that helps them on diagnosis and prevention to make a much more informed decision. And so what is important and what is at stake today is just to understand that 70% today of all decisions affecting diagnostic or treatment involve biological results.
So why is AI needed for medical biology or a new solution?
Well, actually, if you consider a lab test report, that's around 30 to 40 individual numerical parameters, numerical values. They all vary simultaneously depending on the analysis, the time, and the patient. And so a doctor has to consider all of them at the same time and try to consider a large amount of data points while trying to extract the useful ones. In addition, you have to consider also that there are more than 1,000 tests that are now reimbursed by the French National Insurance. So that is very challenging for the human brain. And so we think that it is much easier to perform and to help doctors with thanks to computers. And so this is where AI is very relevant and helpful, because it allows us to try to understand and find low signals in the data, patterns in the data, to try to predict outcomes with a high degree of accuracy. Today, all our algorithms are medically graded, and what is important for us is trying to kind of give superpowers to professionals to help them understand and analyze the data in a much more faster way and also in a more reliable way.
So you were saying just before that 70% of all the health decision making affecting diagnosis or treatment involve laboratory test result. That's a lot. But do you think that you will be able to go beyond?
Sure, we're working on it, actually. And what is important is, in the last 10 years, actually, the number of tests has increased much, much faster than the available resources and time for health professionals. And I'm talking about facts that were true before COVID-19. And so today what we think is that we can go beyond lab test results. And giving you an example, we are working today and we are able to predict an acute kidney injury 48 hours before it occurs. So this is helping professionals on the field to make much more informed decisions. We are also active on the COVID-19 space, and we just teamed up with the APHM hospitals in Marseille, which is one of the biggest hospitals in Europe. And what we do with them is understanding the pathology, the COVID pathology, finding low signals in the data to be able to predict the evolution of the patient's health status based on their biological results. If you look at COVID, for instance, it's quite an early, a new pathology, And we do believe that we can use AI to better understand its dynamics. So that's very important for us, and that's something where we do help on the field.
So let's finish with one question for everyone. What is your vision of the future of AI in diagnosis? So we have a few minutes to discuss about that. Who wants to answer this question?
Well, maybe very quickly. I think you have the picture right here. So basically, success of AI in general in medicine, especially in diagnosis, requires both having healthcare professionals on board, in a way, but also requires have very, very good startups with very good teams that are able to manage the fact that it's basically a medical device software. So that's a completely new object. It's a medical device, but it's still an algorithm. And you need to bring it to the market, and usually you need to find a space to be. So I think that's one of the key, many answers to your question.
Someone wants to add something. What is your vision of the future of AI in diagnosis?
Maybe just to rebound on what Arnaud was saying on the need for technology in addition to healthcare professionals, obviously. In the field of ECG, as you know, there are wearables that are really coming up very quickly with the Apple Watch and all the Withings watches doing the ECGs. So there's an enormous flow of data that is coming to the cardiologists, the EPs themselves, that needs to be analyzed. And that's typically the role of AI, potentially to help to filter out the useless, I would say, or not clinically relevant information, and so that physicians can really focus on what really matters.
And also, I think that in the coming years, we will be able to provide, thanks to what we do here, really targeted and optimal care at scale. And so that is what is very important for us, I think, and what we will be able to deliver in the coming years.
Yes. And I would conclude by saying that so far, being a doctor, I can see how much we need to also refine our practice, starting by collecting data, uniformizing the way we collect data, and find a better dialogue, sometimes with industry people, so we can match our own capacities and really achieve the goal, which is, again, exploiting data and refine diagnosis and predict things before they occur.
Thank you very much for this round table. It was a pleasure to welcome you here. So we are in AI for Health. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.